Welcome to Communicating Good, a podcast by Sam-A-Lot Media, a communication strategy and content production consultancy. I'm Sam, your host, and the Sam of Sam-A-Lot. Like me, you're probably hearing a lot about the Great Resignation, which is referring to the roughly 33 million Americans who have quit their jobs since the spring of 2021. This is the highest quit rate since the government started keeping track 2 decades ago. Many of those choosing to leave their jobs right now cite toxic or ineffective workplace leadership as their reason for leaving. This trend doesn't show signs of slowing down, which means that new leadership practices that support, uplift, and inspire workers must be adopted, and adopted as soon as possible. So, what does that look like, practically speaking? Well, this week I'm joined by Luis Moreno, an expert in human-centered leadership and emotional intelligence, to talk about exactly that. Luis has over 18 years of corporate experience in 7 Fortune 500 companies, and with his strong knowledge of human-centered leadership and emotional intelligence, and his collaborations with other experts worldwide, he's been training a new generation of leaders to be more human, to help foster workplaces that are healthier and happier. Luis obtained an MBA in Marketing and Strategy from the Carlson School at the University of Minnesota, and is a Humphrey Public Policy Fellow. He's engaged in efforts to increase U.S. competitiveness and shared prosperity as a member of the Young American Leaders Program at Harvard Business School. And the Minnesota state government gave Luis the Distinguished Service Award for his contributions in the areas of race relations, justice, community service, education, and civil and human rights. In the conversation you're about to hear, Luis shares his valuable insights about leading with emotional intelligence. I hope you enjoy it and learn as much as I did. Luis, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
So good to see you. I have so many questions to ask you, but first I want to start with kind of a quick lightning round, just to get us warmed up, okay?
Sounds good.
So 4 real quick questions. Here we go. Texting or talking?
Talking.
Please fill in the blank. Taylor Swift is a...
Oh, yeah. I don't know. It's just a good singer.
Bravo. What is the best advice you've ever gotten?
Go slow to go fast.
And last one. Is it okay for a vegetarian to eat animal crackers?
Yes.
Okay. They'll be relieved, I'm sure, to hear that. Okay.
I haven't heard that one.
All right. Now that we're all warmed up, onto the more substantive questions. So you are a practitioner, and I would say even an evangelist of what you call human-centered leadership. What is that exactly?
Human-centered leadership is more about concentrating on the people, on the human side of people, and then just kind of leading more with the heart. So always keeping the vision and the financials in mind, but making sure that we're connecting with the people on the human side.
Nice. So empathy is a word that I think we've begun to hear referenced more frequently in the last few years, fortunately. In your mind, because I know there's a dictionary definition of empathy, but in your mind, what is the definition of empathy?
Yeah, I know. And so to me, empathy is the ability that we have to feel in union with others. So it's to make a decision to feel what somebody else may have felt in the past, maybe feeling at the moment, or could be feeling in the future. And it's also the ability to see somebody else's perspective and get interested in somebody else's something. So he's celebrating somebody else's victory. It's feeling the joy because something good has happened to somebody else. And then kind of in the words of Martin Luther King Jr. is understanding that, an injustice is an injustice, whether you're involved, whether it's happening to you or not. It's an injustice. So I would say, so that's my definition, but I wanted to take this opportunity to say something that I've been talking to other people about. It's like, when is a problem, right? It's a problem when it is affecting you, or it's a problem when it is a problem, regardless of whether it is affecting you directly or not, right? So connecting that with the Martin Luther King Jr. example is, when is an injustice an injustice? Is an injustice only an injustice when it is happening to you? Or not, right? Because then kind of from a workplace standpoint, I asked the question in one of my LinkedIn polls on research that I'm doing, whether people had witnessed an injustice at work and whether, they had kind of failed to do something about it. And it's like a very high percentage. I don't remember top of my head what it was, but like close to 90% or people say yes. So but that is changing, right? Where for newer generations coming into the workplace, maybe for like, baby boomers, it's like, hey, you know what, it's not with you. So just kind of, lay it low and don't intervene unless you have to. But I think for Gen Zs coming into the workplace, I think they'll be more likely to see an injustice and a problem as a problem, regardless of whether it is happening to them or not, and they'll be more likely to intervene and do something about it.
So just to make sure I understand. So there was a poll, and a high number of people said that they had witnessed an injustice in the workplace, but they hadn't done anything about it?
Because of the risk of, having repercussions, right? I mean, so it's like that. So most of the people have witnessed an injustice at work, and they have opted not to do something about it because they didn't want to, risk their jobs.
So, and do you feel then that the millennial generation and Gen Z, because you mentioned they would be more likely to take action, is that because, do you think it's a combination of they are less afraid of losing their jobs? As we've seen sort of in the Great Resignation, and also just maybe an increase in social consciousness among them?
Yeah. So it's kind of all of the above. I think that even social media and the internet. I mean, people talk about like the negative things of the internet and social media, but there are good things about it, right? And one of the good things is that kind of there's that social consciousness of seeing. For example, right now through social media, there's a lot of videos about what some kids are experiencing at school, like the bullying side of things. And so like before, if you're an adult and somebody told you, oh, well, there's bullying happening in school. Oh, well, yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I also had that. That's natural. It's normal, blah, blah, blah. You don't really pay much attention to it. But when you are shown a video that you can see when kids are being beaten up, or when you can hear the words, like the very nasty, very violent words that, and really offensive words that someone could hear, or, being sent to them in a video to their phones, right? When you are 10, 11, 12 years old and you get a message, in one of your social media platforms, and you get that kind of messages, it kind of, it changes your perspective of things. So then you no longer see it as an from a distant spectator that, that it's happening out there, but I don't have anything to do with that. But it's rather you are more willing, so that the media and social media is connecting us to the point where we are now wanting to do. So like, for example, right now when there are news about somebody disappearing, right? So like the recent case where, like the Gabby, I don't remember the last name, but we're in a van and then she disappeared. And
Brian, her husband, Brian Laundrie.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So the country is engaged and is involved, and and folks are sending, sometimes the police department will receive, hundreds of leads, and because people want, and they don't know these people, they don't know who they are, anything, they've never seen them, but it's like they no longer want to be indifferent. They want to be part of what's happening. And in fact, now, so for example, Netflix has a series out there about something bad that is happening based on, inspiring true stories. And then you see Google knows that the searches for that theme, go way up because, people watch the series and now they want to know, well, where did this happen? Where, what's the connection? What can I do? Who can I call? And, so folks are becoming more intentional about doing something about the things that are happening. So,
well, I am very interested in your story. So would you share a bit about the experiences in your life that created the person you are today? That is someone who is so focused on human-centered leadership.
Yeah. No, that I believe in that we need to evolve and learn and grow. And I noticed when I come originally from Latin America. I came to go to school here in the Midwest, and when I came and I was working, I wanted to have fun at work. It's like I wanted to have, but I was quickly told the message, hey, here, like, work is not about having fun. Work is to do the work, like, put your head down and just, we have to, work really hard. And I remember, and so you want to have fun, well, after 5 p.m. and before 8 a.m. or on the weekends, or when you go on vacation, or when you retire, when you're 65, then you can have fun. And I was actually reflecting on that and thinking that is in some countries, right? Like in some areas of the US, in some places in Europe, like in, Germany, in some places in Asia, it is like that work is not associated with fun at all. But I know that in some other parts of the world, actually, people think of work like, well, if I'm going to spend so much of my time at work, I can't be in a place where I am miserable. I need to be at a place where, at least from a well-being standpoint, I am in a place where I am with people that I like, that I feel good with, that I can collaborate, and we can do work that is fulfilling, that has a purpose, that, I feel is connected to the things that so then ultimately, if I'm working on something that I like and I enjoy, then I'm having fun. And I was, remember at the time, more than 20 years ago, that people would challenge me on that. And then what you're seeing now in the new research and, after in the past 2 years with the pandemic and now the great resignation that we're seeing is you ask, and this is one of the polls that I did. I asked, should work be fun? That was like the four-word poll. Should work be fun? And I think it was, I can't remember, but it was a very high percentage, like around 80% or something like that answer yes. And I think that I think it was only 3% of people said no, because you had a percent of people, I gave the option of it depends. And people say, well, it depends, right? I mean, there are some types of job where you can be having fun. And that, obviously that makes sense, right? I mean, if I can definitely think of a job when you're not supposed to have fun. But anyway, so that was one piece that I realized. Okay, leadership. When we think about evolution, one of the things that is evolving is leadership, and that as we have new generations coming in, in the workplace, we have multiple generations. 4 or 5 generations. You have the gens. We have the baby boomers, Gen Xers, Gen Ys, Gen Zs, all in the same place. And the folks that were very successful, in the 80s, and they started to move up and they got to the top and they're, leading all of these great organizations, they could run the risk of thinking, well, I can continue to be successful by leading the people with the same, having the same success by doing the things that I did in the 80s, right? That took me here to where I am. But as the new generations coming into the workplace, the things that were very successful in the 80s won't be successful now, because what people look for in their leaders and how they want to be led is different. For example, they want to now have fun. So when a Gen Z comes into a workplace and says, I want to have fun, somebody from a previous generation may say, well, great, I have a solution for you. I'm going to buy a ping pong table, and I'll put the ping pong table right there, or a ping pong table. I put it there on the lunch, so that during the noon break, right, at lunchtime or at 5 p.m., you can go and play some ping pong, and then that's good. That's resolved. But actually, what the Gen Z is thinking is not to play ping pong at noon. They're thinking about work, the content of what they're working on, the projects that they're working on. They want that to be purposeful, to be meaningful, they want to be connected to, they want to have fun. They want to work with other people that share their values, that are also, folks that are trustworthy, that have empathy, that have compassion, that, that you can use humor with, that are curious. And that's what they mean when they say that they want to have fun at work, right? So then there's evolution. And the other piece that is interesting is that there are some changes. For example, in the 80s and the 90s, early 2000, the whole thing about how do you make somebody a leader, how do you help somebody learn, is throw them in there, and if they swim or sink, right? I mean, they gotta swim, and that's like the best way to learn is by allowing people to see whether they can survive by themselves. But right, what we're seeing right now is that may have been amazing and successful in the past, and I'm sure that there are many leaders out there that were very successful by doing that. But that's not the way to. That is changing, right? So that's not the way that we want to train leaders now. And as I go out talking about how we can train future leaders, I think that the thought about let them resolve things by themselves is changing into. When we see the employee surveys, what they're saying is when they think of a leader, they actually think of a leader that is involved, is a leader that they can go to and say, I am experiencing this situation, I'm having this problem, and they don't want to be left alone to resolve the things themselves. They want to have. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to, go ahead, but I need to have your support. I need to have your involvement. I need to have your engagement. I need you to give me the guidelines, and I need you to give me the tools, and I need you to give me some wisdom that can help me to resolve the situation. For example, right now in the past 2 years, when we're, after the murder of George Floyd, there has been a lot of learning in the DEI world, right, in the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the curtain has been lifted, and a lot of things have been revealed, right? And there are a lot of problems out there that people were being indifferent to, and kind of like people look the other way, and some things that were not correct kind of were let, to be happening. But they are not allowed right now, and they cannot continue to happen. So if you are a leader and you have a person in your team that comes to you and presents to you a very complex DEI dynamic that is happening in the team, it would be a disservice to the person, to the company, and to yourself to leave that very complex DEI problem to be solved by a junior. It's like a person that just graduated from college, is in their 20s, and you're going to put them to resolve something that the world has not been able to resolve. So that is an example of a situation, for example, when you don't want to leave a person swim or sink, that you need to actually, engage in the situation, provide the tools and provide the guidelines and the wisdom and the knowledge, and be with them and check in with them and say, hey, how's it going? And I'll check with you tomorrow and help, because otherwise, from the data, Gen Zs that are coming into the workplace and they have leaders that are leaving them to resolve things by themselves, and leaders that are kind of distant and disengaged, you're not going to retain those Gen Zs, right? Their likeliness of a Gen Z to look for another job is much higher than a baby boomer had. Mm.
Yeah. I love that you're mentioning the research, because I'm also a big fan of it. And I think that I'm so grateful that there's so much good research that's being done right now that's revealing a lot of really helpful insights about generations. As you probably know, I'm a big fan of millennial generation, and Gen Z right behind them. But just more generally, I'm really fascinated by the human condition, what's going on with humans. And there have been surveys and other research conducted in the last few years that ask people for their thoughts on how to solve the major challenges facing the world today. Things like the climate crisis and disparity of wealth and poverty. And one interesting finding in the research is that people, especially millennials who were surveyed, feel that businesses are better equipped than the government to solve those challenges. Do you think that businesses are better equipped than the government to help make something like empathy more common?
So I have worked with some government agencies that are really doing a great job, and they are performing better than some other corporations. And I have worked with corporations that, private corporations that really are behind and have so much opportunity. So I think that in general, right, the perception of most people, that many people have, is that they think of government of, government is big and slow and, incompetent, it's not diligent, that people don't have the willingness or the, they don't have the attitude of service. And whereas, corporate tends to be kind of more oriented towards the customer, and be more diligent and more competent, but that is not always the case for everyone. And I think that, the good thing about diversity, equity, and inclusion is to accept the fact that we are all in a learning journey, and we're all learning. And one of the learnings is that there are some categories that we use to group people that actually, I've always thought, when people use, for example, nationality, right, and say like, well, all Mexicans are Mexicans are this, or, Venezuelans are like that, or, right? It's like, think about, if they say, well, Americans, like if you go to some places, in some other places in the world, people will tell you Americans are arrogant, right? So, but think about that. Well, there are, more than 300 million people here, and we're not all the same. We're so different. And there are some Americans that are arrogant, and then some other Americans that are not arrogant. But we are using then that category, that group with a nationality, and say Americans are, now that there are instances where you can use a nationality for, certain things, like statistically, you can say, for example, hey, Latinos are young, because if you take, if you take all of them, you take their age, their median age, and then they come to be like a young age. So you can say then Latinos are young because statistically they are young. But when we use them to say something like they're arrogant, right, about an attitude, then, I don't always. So I think that's an opportunity from a diversity, equity, inclusion to not think about these categories to say, or even when, from a political standpoint, you say Republicans are this, or, Democrats are this, because, not all Democrats are the same, not all Republicans are the same. There is, or, when people say, African Americans are, women are, imagine, right? It's like women are, well, there's probably more than, 170 million women in the US. And I don't know that two are the same. Even if they're twins, they would not be the same. So anyway, an opportunity.
So we're roughly 2 years into the COVID pandemic, and we've all been separated in various ways. There's also been an increase in a number of, I don't know, not corresponding necessarily, but nonetheless contentious circumstances, especially related to things like partisan politics. So what have you noticed in relation to your work in human-centered leadership during this moment in time? Are you noticing anything about people in general right now, or culture more broadly? And I know, I recognize the irony that we just talked about, not the importance of not broadly categorizing anybody, but...
No, I think that, so one of the messages that I've been sharing with people in my training is this idea of opening our minds, right? Kind of like based on the fixed mindset and growth mindset. And sometimes there are certain things that we do that we just think of them as being something positive that can work against us and that are not always positive. So for example, one of the things that most people would think of positively is the concept of loyalty, right? So you're loyal, you stay always, you stay true to something. So like if I'm true to my values, I'm loyal to my values. So I may have a thought right now. So right now at this point in time, with the information that I have and the lived experiences that I have and everything that I've read and seen and everything that I've been exposed to, I have a thought about something. So then I take that thought and I am loyal to it, and I live the rest of my life with this loyalty to this thought that actually, so I'm thinking, well, it's amazing because that thought those are my values and my principles, and I'm going to stay tied to that, and I'm never going to derail from my values. So everybody would agree, most people would agree that's a great idea, but actually that's not necessarily a good thing. Because when you do that, right, I mean, I have a thought right now, but that thought is based on everything that I've been exposed to as of to right now. But in time, right, next year or in 6 years or 5 or 10 years, there could be new evidence, new information, new technology, that I've been maybe be exposed to something different. I may mature and kind of change my mind about something. And if I have taken that thought and connected to my identity, now I am locked because I don't have the ability then to flex, and I don't have the ability to evolve and kind of, switch and change gears because I have told the world that, I have these thoughts. So it could be that, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. It's very dangerous because it could be that somebody that you have a lot of respect for and somebody that you love says something to you with kind of gives you an advice, a thought, a moral, a story or something. And then you are thinking that because you love that person, you are to live the rest of your life, kind of following that message from that person. But what if, so maybe when I was 10 years old, I had a grandfather that with the experiences that he had and everything, and, what if he told me a man that is in love with another man is not a man, for example? And now, so if I have to hold on to that and live the rest of my life thinking that, well, I'm going to have a problem because, obviously I am going to be dismissing people. I'm going to be thinking that people, a man that loves another man is not worthy of, love or existence or respect. And so what if I become a leader and I have somebody in my team, a gay man that is in love with another man? Then I will never have the ability to respect that person. And I may not even give a job to that person because my grandfather, when I was 10 years old, told me that, right? So what I have to understand is that those are just thoughts and opinions at a certain point of time that other people have, other people may share with me, and that I may have myself. But I have to leave my mind open, and I have to leave the possibility that I can B, I can change and I can evolve in my thinking, and I have to be able to stop believing something that I believed at some point in the past, and I can start believing something new that I didn't believe. Maybe I never believed in God. Maybe I grew up as an atheist, or like I never wanted to believe in God, and then I had a close to death experience or something. Or I was in the hospital in coma, and somebody came in, did some praying. Now I am living in some miracle. The doctors tell me, you know what, we can't understand how you're alive because all of the test says that you're supposed to be dead. Maybe at that point in time, I decide that, well, I want to start believing in that. And why would be, I have to have the opportunity to do that, to have that evolution. And if I was a Republican and I want to be a Democrat, or I was a Democrat, I want to be a Republican, maybe I was always tied to one party and now I don't want to be tied to any party, or, maybe before. So it's like we have to be able to change. So that's a long answer to your question, but what I wanted to say there is that what I have experienced is that because of that notion of the romanticism of staying loyal to something, sometimes people are thinking, say politically, right? They think, so let's suppose that I grew up in a house where my grandparents told me, immigrants are bad for the country. They come in and they take the resources of others, like Latinos come here illegally and all that. And they told me that, right? So imagine now if I live the rest of my life thinking that, but what I have to, so that, you stay like tied to that because that was told to me by somebody that I really admire and love and care for. So now when somebody comes to me and wants to talk to me about immigration, because I love my grandparents and they told me that, and I really value that, I'm going to protect it with my life. So when people come and they want to tell me, it's like, no, it's like, thank you very much. It's like, I appreciate it, but like, I have to go get something to eat. And I go because I don't even want to be exposed to anything that is different from what I believe, because I want to protect what I believe are my values and principles, which don't have to be, but I protect them in that way, right? So then I am putting this wall around me that is actually blocking for other people that are coming to me to expose to me different perspective and different side of right. So so when I go in my trainings, go out and talk to people, what I recommend is this idea that you can actually understand, you can actually listen, pay attention to, and understand an idea that you disagree with, because understanding is not agreeing. Understanding is, I want to think through your logic. Like, you're going to share a story with me, and I want to take the time to listen with attention. And I'm going to think through I want to think through your thinking, and I want to kind of like walk through the mechanics of your thought with you, but I don't have to move to believe what you believe. I'm just trying to understand what you believe, right? And I've had training where people say, well, that makes no sense. That's like crazy. How can you understand something that you disagree with, right? How can you, so sometimes people tell me, how can you empathize with somebody that you disagree with? And I say, okay, so they say, give me an example. I say, okay, well, I'll give you an example. Law enforcement, right? When there is a situation that, they receive a call and somebody has somebody else as hostage. There's a criminal who has somebody else that is, retained, under, against their will, right? So they're hostage. So they want to negotiate with the person because they want the person to release the hostage, right? So what they will do, sometimes they'll work in teams, and you have someone that establish a communication with the criminal, right? So maybe on the phone or something, and they establish this conversation. While one person is talking with the criminal, the rest of the team is like very quickly searching, who is the person? Where did the person go to school? Where did he study? Where, it's like all the information that they can get as quickly as possible, right? Because they're trying to understand the profile of that person, trying to understand, first is like, what could be the motive? Why could the person be doing that? Did the person know do they know each other? Do they have any kind of relationship or something? If not, it's okay. What could have happened in the life of that person to do something like, what he's doing right now, right? And then also to find points of connection, like what is something that the person is connected to that I can use to gain some connection with the person, because I'm trying to establish a rapport And I am also trying to understand the psyches of the person. I'm trying to understand why is the person thinking that way and why is the person doing that. So when I do that, I can get to understand, I empathize with the person. I understand the person. I may understand why they're doing what they're doing, but I'm not agreeing. And people say, it's like, no, you are agreeing because you understand. No, because if I agreed, it means that I would be likely to do that too. And I don't agree that what he's doing is a good thing, and I will never do it. But I am understanding why he's doing it. And by understanding it, why, and I'm using he because obviously in most of the situation, it is a man that is involved in this thing, right? Statistically, men do that more than women. So I am just trying to understand the reasons why a person would do that so that I can use it in my negotiation to talk with them and convince them to release the person. But I will never be in the same, in an agreement that is a good thing to do and that I would do it myself, right? So that's an example of why understanding somebody else's position is not the same as agreeing. So if you are on one side of a political spectrum and you have always been, so like I've always been a Republican, I was born in Texas, my parents were Republican, my grandparents were Republican, I'm always Republican, but somebody comes in and they want to share an idea with you about X, about something that, maybe just historically Republicans have not supported. Well, don't worry, don't be intimidated that the fact that somebody wants to share an idea with you, don't see that as a threat. It's actually a gift to you. Somebody is just kind of coming to you to share with you something that is valuable. Why is it valuable? Because it's somebody else's lived experience. And because we cannot live all of the lived experiences, only other people can live certain lived experiences. So then they come to us with the gift of, they're basically opening a window, they're opening a perspective, they're sharing a perspective with us. So that's an act of generosity. They're coming to us, sharing a perspective. So don't feel threatened that the person, it's like the person is just being generous to you, giving you a perspective. Listen to a perspective with attention, consider it, understand it, and then decide whether you want to agree or not. And if you don't want to disagree, that's okay. And you can still be thankful to somebody who offers you a perspective on something that you disagree with, right? Because I can not only be thankful because you changed my mind. I mean, it's like I didn't change my mind, but thank you for giving me the gift of giving me your perspective and helping me to understand why you think of something a certain way.
I'm really wonderfully overwhelmed by your answer, and it's what you're talking about. This kind of approach to one another. For so many people, it's so counterintuitive, right? As you say, it's because it's the opposite of what they have learned and been brought up with. So knowing that, so there's a whole new kind of muscle memory that has to be built around empathy. With that in mind, as my final question, is there one small step that you can advise people to take if they want to begin developing that muscle, that empathy muscle? Yes.
So I will, so this won't be short. This will be long, like my answers, but there is one exercise that is a visualization exercise, right? And the visualization exercise is to think about so emotional intelligence about our emotions, understanding our emotions, and managing our emotions. So in that managing of our emotions, one exercise is visualize so when we feel something for someone, right? If you're gonna feel something for someone, that feeling, you have to create it. So one exercise is to visualize the process to create the feeling that you're going to feel for somebody. So let's think about two kinds of feelings, right? So the negative feelings, like feelings of hate, for example, right? Resentment, those bad feelings. So we're going to think that our heart is the place where those feelings are created. So when we think of negative feelings like hate and resentment, and those are very strong feelings that can be, very tough and hard and right? So they're very strong, and they need to be created in a factory. So now your heart is this factory that is, to create hate, you have to use all these chemicals, and this process of creating hate produces waste, and the waste is like, the cortisol, and all of that waste is draining in your own body, right? So if I hate you, so Samantha, if I hate you, to be able to hate you, I need to manufacture the hate that I'm going to feel for you. So because the place where the hate is manufactured is in me and in my body, I am going to feel those feelings that I am going to feel for you. So like, you may or may not know that I'm hating you. So you may or may not receive the negative effect of hate, because maybe you'll never, I'm feeling hate for you, but you have no idea that I hate you. So like, you're fine. But I am not, because I am actually the one receiving the negative effects of the hate that I am creating inside of me, because that cortisol that is being produced as a waste of this manufacturing process of the hate is staying with me, and it can stay for hours, for days, and maybe for years, right? So that's a manufacturing of a bad negative feeling. Now, on the other hand, conversely, when we think of positive feelings, like feelings of love, feelings of friendship, feelings of gratitude, right? Appreciation, then because these are softer feelings, right, that are good feelings, they don't require a factory or anything. So don't think of these people in a factory, but think more of like a handmade process. So maybe these are, if the love that comes, so mothers love because they love their baby, so the motherly love of a mother, a grandmother. So I'm thinking more like a table where you have these, women with all the love creating with their hands. So it's almost like they are sewing, right? So they're sewing this love with all of this love. And then the whatever maybe waste of that process is more like the good things. It's like, oxytocin and dopamine and all of these good things that are coming into my body. So if I love you, then I have to produce and create that love that I'm going to feel for you. And then you may or may not know that I love you, because maybe I don't tell you, so you don't know that I love you. But my body will actually benefit from the process of creating that love that is handmade in my heart. So if I have a body and I have a place where I'm going to be making these feelings, why would I use my only heart, my only body to have this manufacturing process with chemical to produce this hate for others that may not affect others but may affect me, when I can actually use it to feel something that is positive for me, that will be good for me, for my body, for my mind, that can actually affect my health positively. Because, there is now, there's a lot of studies that will demonstrate that, the feelings, folks that live a life of gratitude and a life of love actually can live a healthier life, right? Because from a chemical standpoint, the chemicals that are released in your body when you have positive thoughts are more positive from you and your health than the negative chemicals that are released into your body when you have negative thoughts, like thoughts of hate and resentment. So that's a long story, but then in this exercise is to think about when we leave our home, or even within our home when we wake up in the morning. So in the morning when we wake up, we have no feelings, no thoughts, because we just open our eyes coming back, from sleeping for many hours. And the moment that we wake up and we have no thoughts and no feelings, right, our body is like searching for, because I need to be thinking something, I need to be. And then what the first thing that comes to our mind is we go to the past. And usually the strongest thoughts and feelings that we have are associated to something negative, right? It can be a sense of like anxiety. I'm worried because, it could be financial, or something has happened at work. I'm worried about something. So in the morning that I wake up, if I have no plan, and I leave it to my brain to find a thought, to start the day with a thought, that thought is more likely going to be a negative thought, because I'm traveling to the past to find a bad memory. But what I can do is when we think of emotions and thought, instead of being like a victim of emotions where emotions control us, we can actually practice, and it's not an easy thing to do, but we can work and develop the ability to actually be able to design and create our emotions, where we're no longer the victim of our emotions because we are always recipient of them, but we're actually the creator of our emotions. So the night before I go to bed and go to sleep, I can think of something positive. It could it could be in the future. It can, think about something that you are interested in this podcast. You want this to succeed, so you can visualize these podcasts being successful, being out there, having many people listening to it. Maybe this become, you want to write a book, or maybe you want to do an event, or there's something you want to buy a new house, a new car, or something that's something positive that causes in you a sense of joy. So you can think about the feelings that gives you, right? It's a sense of like joy, ecstasy, excitement. And then the night before, you already make a decision. You have a plan that tomorrow, when I wake up and I have no thoughts and no feelings, rather than leave it to, let my body and my brain find a negative thought from the past, I can get ahead of that. And I already say, the one thing that I want to think about is this book that I want to read that gives me joy. And then you basically, you decide what you want to feel. And the interesting thing is that you can actually, in the studying of your emotions, you can pay more attention. So through an exercise of mindfulness and attention, you can pay attention to the things you feel. When you feel happy and you feel excitement and you are, you have hope and you're excited about something, you have to pay attention to how it feels. Like, how does it feel in your body? How does it manifest? What happens in your body when you feel excitement and emotion? And then you can, if you pay attention to that, you can actually create like this photograph where you are basically memorizing this good feeling that you want to have. So then in the next time, so like, okay, in the vector of knowing your emotions, right? Maybe, last year, maybe I am divorced and I went to pick up my kids at the game and I saw my ex. And when I saw my ex, I, became and I made up a scandal there. And I started to act very, and I made I made a fool of myself. And then a year later, I realized, as I start learning my emotions, I understand that at that moment I wasn't thinking rationally because my brain was overtaken by a big emotion, a negative emotion. And now I realize it today, a year later. But as I continue to learn about emotions and feelings, then I am going to accelerate. I'm going to accelerate the time in which I realize that the emotion that I'm going through and how long it takes. So now I don't need a year to realize that was happening to me, but I can maybe, yesterday I did that, and then, this morning, and then you can get to a point where you can detect an emotion that you're feeling at the moment. So right now you're talking to me, you're saying something that my body is reacting to it. And I can, although I'm feeling the feeling, I can recognize it. I can recognize that I'm feeling that emotion, and I can, recognize it at the moment, and I can shorten the period of time. So instead of now spending, the next 3 days mad about something, I just can, shorten that. But then it doesn't stop there, because since I have studied what happens with my body when I am sad, when I am mad, when I am anxious, when I in all of these states and all of these emotions, I'm going to choose what are the emotions that I prefer to feel because they are more positive for my body. And once I learn those emotions, I can then on demand, I can actually generate that feeling, but not based on anything external. So like I can be happy, but not because I got a new job, I bought a new car, or because I published a new book, but I can be happy because I on demand, I make the decision to be happy, right? And I can, now that I know how my body feels when I am happy, I can then on purpose, feel what I'm feeling. So in the morning, again, don't let your body go to the negative thoughts of the past. Tell your body, I'm going to polish that book. I am going to buy that house. I'm going to, see somebody that I love. And then with all of that emotion, you can then design the feelings that you want to have and the emotions you want to have. And people say, well, you can, design the life you're going to have. But if you start with your emotion, that's a good way to start, because obviously your life is going to depend on what you feel and what your emotions are, right? When we are under negative emotions, we make bad decisions. when we are on the positive emotions, we're more likely to make better decisions. And some people say that your life is the result of the decisions that you make. So if you make better decisions, you're going to have a better life. So then the connection would be, if you have better emotions, you have the likeliness of making better decisions. And if you make better decisions, you have a higher likeliness of having a better life.
So mindful, deliberate, practiced empathy.
Yes.
I think that's sounds like an amazing way forward for us out of this moment in time, Luis. Wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I can't wait to get it out into the world and share with everybody so we can all start really practicing empathy.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being interested in my work. And thank you for listening and for having an open mind to these perspectives. And I hope that you practice some of the things that we discussed here today, and then you let me know, over the next few weeks or months, and you tell me, well, Luis, that was crazy. I tried and it didn't work. Or you may say, I tried this thing and, I now I'm experiencing something new and different and better. And I hear that from some of the participants from my sessions, that they'll come back a few weeks or months later and they'll say, I have a better experience by applying something that we learned from our discussion. And that that's very gratifying to know that you can help somebody have a better day or a better life just by exposing a new perspectives and new ideas on something different that we could be doing.
Wonderful. I will stay in touch. Thank you, sir. The need for emotionally intelligent leadership is clearly significant. But as Luis shared, the good news is that there are simple, practical steps anyone, whether they're in a formal leadership role or not, can take to connect meaningfully with others using compassion and empathy. To learn more about Luis and his work in human-centered leadership, check out the show notes for this episode at communicatinggood.buzzsprout.com. That's buzz like the bees do. You'll find links to Luis's social media and other digital platforms that offer information about him. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Communicating Good. Thanks for tuning in, and please feel free to send your feedback to sam@samalotmedia.com. See you next time.